Thank you for tuning into the Radicards podcast on radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Greeno, and today we have Ryan Daly joining us. We're going to be talking about Japanese All-Star game, actually All-Star series. So it's MLB All-Stars versus Samurai Japan. And we'll be talking about some listings on eBay, and we're going to close it out with a conversation about card shows. So to set things off here, Ryan was, I guess, recently at a CVS, and he bumped into Giancarlo Stanton. Ryan, you want to talk about that?
Yes. Legendary CVS, obviously, we all know and love. This was a couple weeks ago, right around when the playoffs were getting started off. And Stanton's team was obviously not in the mix at that time. And he's from LA originally. And this was a CVS in West Hollywood area. And that guy is gigantic. He's a beast of a man. And I didn't say anything to him. I could have said something because his half-brother or step-brother was my TA in college for a couple classes.
Really?
And this was back in like 2010 when Stanton, I believe, had either made his debut or was just about to make his debut. So he wasn't quite the household name yet. He was still Mike Stanton back then.
Right.
But anyways, I could have walked up to Giancarlo and said like, "Oh, hey, how's your brother doing?" And actually had like a real conversation with him instead of just saying, "Oh, hey, I'm such a big fan. Can you sign my shirt?" But he was with some friends, and it was like a weeknight, so I'm sure he was just trying to lay low. So I let him do his thing, but it was fun to watch him sort of dominate that CVS. And as I was checking out and leaving, I told the cashier, I was like, "Do you know who Giancarlo Stanton is, the right fielder for the Yankees?" And she said, "Nope." And I said, "Well, he's right over there." And she could not care less. So it was exciting for me, but I don't think anybody else in the store thought anything of him except that guy's super tall. So
I mean, there's subcultures for so many different things, and people who are going to be fans in one culture aren't going to care less about something from another culture. I mean, you see this all over the board with, jocks and preps between nerds and geeks and metalheads. I mean, you're going to see like all the different groups just focusing in on their own areas and just not caring or picking on the other groups. Typically that happens like in high school, and then you grow out of that and you have respect for all the different groups as you get older. You just like kind of understand that there's value everywhere. But it's funny, you told the cashier that there's like a multimillionaire standing right over there, and they're like, who cares?
Yeah, who cares? Yep. So that was fun. Just another thing to add to my odd celebrity sightings in LA.
There you go. If I can recall correctly, many years ago, I want to say like 92, we were on a plane ride, my family and I. I think this was when we were flying out to Hawaii back in 92. On our plane was Ozzy Osbourne, and I think, I don't know if he had his band or his family with him, but I remember Ozzy Osbourne was on the same plane we were on, but I was too young to like really conceptualize the significance of it. I just knew he was a rock star.
Wow.
My older brother was a bigger fan. I never really grew up listening to Ozzy Osbourne. It's sort of like not really my style, but I thought that was like kind of cool. That was, I think, one of my first interactions. I didn't talk to him or bump into him. I guess he was sitting a few seats up to the left, against the window or something, but whatever. I mean, stuff happens, and I was quite a bit younger at the time. Oh, and 92 on that trip was when my mom bought a Mickey Mantle signed baseball, for $75 in Hawaii. I still have it. It's actually in my office here. So
what a great time to be buying Mickey Mantle stuff.
$75 back then. I guess he was signing so much back then that he was making almost more money going to shows and signing autographs than he made playing baseball. So it's kind of amazing, actually. Ryan, you want to introduce us on this next point here? Well, actually, this first point, really, the Japanese All-Star Series.
Yeah, so this is kind of a cool tradition, and it's a select group of MLB All-Stars from this year. So not all of them, but a nice chunk of them went to Japan to play Samurai Japan, which is like the national baseball team, sort of like USA Baseball. It'd be the team that Japan would send to the Olympics.
Oh, okay.
So in theory, the best of the best, from the Japanese professional league.
Sure.
And they are playing our all-stars. And most of the players that went over are younger. The exciting rookies like Acuna and Juan Soto. I think Scott Kingery's over there. So, not like the bona fide superstars, but still a solid group of MLB players are over there. And I think it's a 6-game series. Technically, it's, exhibition, just sort of a tradition, like a diplomatic thing, I guess, between the two countries. But you can stream it and watch these games if you're interested. And as you know, a lot of the cream of the crop from Japan oftentimes end up in America playing baseball. So it might be kind of a cool opportunity to see some future talent that you might see on one of your teams. I know there's a really popular Japanese pitcher. I'm blanking on his name right now, probably because it's a super complicated name, but he's sort of like the next potential Japanese player to come over.
Cool.
And so that'd be sort of fun to watch him. I'm sure he's using this as an opportunity to show off his stuff to the MLB players.
Sure.
So I think the only really action right now, if you want to watch live professional baseball, is like the Arizona Fall League, which is like an all-star league for minor leaguers. And then there's this series in Japan. So keep an eye on it. There's been a few little highlights I've seen online. And it's just sort of a fun time to watch.
Yeah, I think those are good things to touch upon because there's so much talent coming out of that part of the world, and I know Japan, they have a large baseball culture over there, and so it's nice to see that get that kind of exposure from both sides of the world, and so I think it's great. I mean, I look forward to seeing who else comes out of that area of the world and plays for national teams here in the western side of the world. So it's gonna be exciting to see what comes of it. And I'm always still rooting for guys that we've picked up along the way over the last decade or so. I still root for guys like Yu Darvish and Masahiro Tanaka, and heck, Shohei Ohtani. I mean, there's just talent in Japan, and it's cool that we get to develop them here as well. So yeah, get a chance to sort of review who's has potential there to, maybe we'll see them in future Bowman products.
Yeah. And I recently, the way that MLB teams can acquire Japanese players has changed. And that's why Ohtani he's not over here on a huge contract like Yu Darvish and Tanaka are. So I think that's made the MLB management sort of more open to bringing over these players, because Yu Darvish costs so much money just to even get into the country. I mean, same with Tanaka. I mean, those teams paid through the nose for those guys. So now it's a little more reasonable. I think you give the Japanese team a lot of money, a certain amount of money, but you don't have to really give the player like a huge contract. So I think we might be seeing some more Japanese players coming over because of that.
That'll be helpful. I know that the Daisuke Matsuzaka. That was one of the bigger contractual hurdles that we had to overcome to bring him to Boston. And I know that it was expensive just to talk to him. That was a cost in and of itself. I remember that being probably the first one I heard about that was, that it was significant for obviously news, but just in the sense of how much it costs just to do the very minor things of just getting in touch with the person. So, it's nice to know that those restrictions might be made more lenient in the future, so that connections can be made in an easier, maybe more affordable way.
Yes, and I think the way they structured it is the MLB team pays whatever Japanese team you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But that number, so if you give him 20 million bucks, that 20 million doesn't go towards your payroll. So you don't have to worry about the luxury tax and having a huge payroll if you're going to spend $20 million on a player. So that's another key thing, because you're able to add a guy like Shohei Ohtani and not worry about your overall payroll for your team and hitting the luxury tax. And, you know, that can sort of add extra stress when you're bringing over a player that's kind of not tested in America.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Cool, man. I'm glad we got to talk about that. That's a nice little add-in introduction. Moving on, the bulk of our podcast today, we're going to be talking about some auctions that either have hit eBay, have sold, or prices have been reduced, or what have you. So let's get right into it here. If you've been collecting for, gosh, I guess any amount of time, really, you've probably seen some PWCC listings over the course of your eBay searches. I've been following them for many, many years and just have kind of watched them grow as a company, and it's been really cool to see that progress. They're always listing really nice things. You know, as a Frank Thomas collector and just general passionate baseball card collector myself, I've been looking for 2 cards in this particular set, 1996 Select Certified Mirror Golds, for my Frank Thomas collection, because he's in the set twice. And I blogged about this set a couple of years back, and I may have made it, you know, set myself up to pay more money when something does surface, because my blog post may have made the rounds and people Google search it and then find out that I have like a list of recorded sales showcasing, you know, how much these cards are selling for. And then I boast about how important the set is and how rare it is, etc. I mean, I do that because I think it's important for knowledge. Even though I don't have the 2 cards, some might argue that doing that before you have the 2 cards might be a bad decision, because it just makes you pay more when the cards do surface. But, you know, as excited as I am about baseball cards, I just wanted to blog about that set. So I did. And card number 1, which is Frank Thomas in the set, one gentleman had an example and sent me a message through my blog from that blog post and saying, "Hey, I've got this card. How about this number?" And I'm like, gosh, I wish I could afford that number. And then I was thinking, like, maybe I published that blog post too soon, because now I'm like stuck in a situation I have to pay huge dollar figures for the Frank Thomas card. And that was the first time I had seen that card listed, and it sold for like $3,500, I think, at the time. This was just last year. And then another gentleman who had one listed his. And so that was the second time I had seen it that year. And so I didn't get that one either, because it sold for around the same price. So card number 1 I had seen now twice on the auction block. I'm like, okay, I didn't get that either of those times. So maybe I'll see it again. But Thomas is also in the subset at the end of the set called Pastime Power. He's card number 135. And I'd never seen that card. In fact, back in 2014, Ryan, you might remember I created a Google Doc and put in like visual references of certain Frank Thomas cards I was after, and then I think I shared the document with you to like show you. I think there were like 10 or 15 cards. And because I didn't have an image of the mirror gold of card number 135, the Pastime Power Frank Thomas card, I basically toggled with like my mirror blue and tried to change like the hue, saturation, and made it look gold. It looked kind of crappy at the end of the day, but it was all I had. And I was like, I don't know if I'll ever see card 135, so I got to have some reference of this thing. So going back to PWCC, they recently listed a block of mirror gold cards, 13 of them to be exact. And of the 13, they have the entire run of Pastime Power cards, less the Ken Griffey Jr. Ken Griffey Jr. is card number 136. And Pastime Powers go from 135 to 144, and all of those other cards are listed in this block. Really, really interesting stuff. And I have, just one of these things is like, gosh, I probably won't be able to participate in this auction because it's going to go for probably way more than I have allocated at this time toward this type of purchase. And so I'm prepping a blog post right now where I've got basically all the images, and I'm going to have a recorded sales. Go to radicards.com and keep an eye out, and just type mirror gold into the search bar, and you'll find this at some point. If not right now, you'll see it at a later time. It'll be there. So definitely go check on that. You can see all these and the recorded sale dates and the end prices and this sort of thing. So my valuation of the Thomas in this block is between $3,000 and $4,000. That's my evaluation. It's a BGS 10, but because of its scarcity, I honestly don't think it being graded any grade is going to have that much of an impact in final sale value because of how rare this card is. Mm-hmm. Now, that's just the Thomas. There's like Nomo, Albert Bell, Cal Ripken, Mike Piazza, Greg Maddux. I mean, these are big stars at the time. Klesko and Chipper Jones, Mo Vaughn. These are all big superstars, and that's just pastime powers. They've also got in the actual set Tony Gwynn, Bernie Williams, Cal Ripken Jr., and Chan Ho Park. Chan Ho Park I had not seen before, and so it's going to be nice to see kind of where these go when they close next week. So definitely keep an eye on the blog for this article. Look out for it. Go search for it. And have a look at these end prices. It's going to be interesting to see kind of where these go. So I just want to touch on this because this is such a significant time in the auction block to see all these at once. And it's the first time I've ever seen a gold pastime power Thomas. So,
yeah, big cards. Really
Huge.
Big cards.
Yeah.
I'll be watching the move on.
Right. Yeah.
We'll see where that goes.
Yeah. The Vaughn I think will be very attainable, somewhere between my valuations between 80 and 125, right in there. Mm-hmm. I know Maddux, Piazza, Ripken, Chipper, Nomo, those are all going to be huge end prices. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of where this all plays out. But really cool stuff. These are all graded by BGS too, so that's kind of they're all between 9s and 10s. So it'll be fun to see kind of where this ends up. I'm really excited to watch these auctions, but definitely want to touch on that because that's a very significant run of cards. 13 of these things is just a monster run.
Yeah, it's super impressive that it seemingly came from one collection. So
yeah, I can't imagine them getting
impressive.
all these from different vendors all for one.
No.
Just the statistical probability of that is very low. And having this run of them, all the past times less the Griffey, I mean, it's just all the factors play in to lead me to believe that this came from one consignor or consignee. So there you have it. A run of 13 different 96 select certified mirror gold baseball cards have been listed by PWCC auctions. Definitely go check those out. Frank Thomas is right now leading the pack at just above $1,700, and Ripken trailing behind it just above $1,100. So, moving on. You might remember in a previous podcast, Ryan, we talked about Shohei Ohtani, 2018 Bowman Paper Platinum 1 of 1.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the price on that card has now been reduced to $13,050, and it's still sitting. So I'm curious to see now that we're in the off season. He's going to do TGA surgery, and we may or may not see him in 19. I hope we do as a hitter. Where this could potentially go if it were listed auction style. The spike in Ohtani stuff has sort of calmed a bit since the market has, we're kind of looking at other newsworthy items and things like that. Awards are now going to be handed out to certain players now that we're at the end of the season, or the season's over. So I really am curious if they listed this auction style, where it would end up, if it would even reach the 4-figure mark.
Yeah, I don't think so. The seller might get lucky if Ohtani wins Rookie of the Year and someone just goes nuts on Ohtani stuff on eBay, but even that spike I don't think would reach that kind of price. So I would just, if you really want some cash, just list it auction style. It'll do well. It's just not going to do that well.
Yeah, you think it'll go to 1,000? The plates haven't gone to 1,000. They've gotten like $600.
Yeah.
So but I know plates are kind of like, they're one of ones. I get it, but there are 4 of them you have to chase, so it's like a one of one run that you have to go after. and it gets always overwhelming for most of us, like because a lot of us know that the chances of us getting a full run of plates is very low. Some of us do it, but it's just very rare. So a lot
There's
of
no
us,
autograph, right? It's just
yeah, the paper's just a standard card, no autograph.
yeah, BGS 9.
Big card. I mean, it's great card. I mean, I'd love to have it, but there's no way I'd pay $13,000 for it.
No, no.
I'd pay like $800 for it though. I'd fork over $800 for that. You know, I think that's probably about close to what I'd pay for it, I think. So this is kind of interesting because it's still sitting. It's gone now unsold with a price reduction. And it initially sold as an offer for 15 grand. And now it's sitting unsold at a loss essentially. So I'm just kind of curious to see where it goes. So I just want to touch on that as a follow-up. Speaking of follow-ups, the 1974 Topps Ken Griffey Sr. rookie card in a PSA 10 we discussed in a previous podcast, the Dimitri Young collection one, sold for $1,358. So that was, I mean, sizable. And it is somewhat comparable to that card in a 10 without the Dimitri Young collection pedigree on the actual flip. I was kind of doing some research. There's standard deviation between a couple of $100, but it's not as big as I thought it was going to be. But whatever the case, significant sale. And, you know, that's, what is that, 20 times more than 20 times more than what not a PSA 9 sells for. 9 sell for between like $55 and $60. So like,
wow, really?
Yeah. So you can get a 9 for 60, or you can get a 10 for $1,350. It's just like such a huge difference. I'd be happy with a 9. I don't need a 10. Something like that. Give me a 9. I'm good.
Yeah. I was surprised when I saw the ending price. I mean, Ken Griffey is obviously a legend because of his son.
Right.
In his own right, he wasn't a fantastic player. He spent a lot of time in the bigs. But I mean, a 10 for any 1974 card, I suppose, is sort of special in its own right.
Totally.
So there's that, and then the Griffey family is represented. So, and then 3 other people that I'm sure we've never heard of. But yeah, 9s and 10s. It's a big difference.
Such a big difference, and it gets. I mean, that difference just grows exponentially as you go further back. You know, I mean, even 9s and 8s. That it just, as you know, like the older it is, the higher condition it is, the more drastic difference there are between one number to the next. You know, and so, yeah, I mean it's really a solid sale, super solid actually. So I wanted to touch on that. I think it was cool. Tonight, I was watching a 1999 Fleer Brilliance 24 karat gold Mark Grace, and you know it was at I think like $33 in the last 10 seconds. And I was like, I'll just place a $45 bid. $45. And then like there's that submission, and then there's a lot of clockwork that happens. And then it's sorry you were outbid at $255. And I was like, wow, that's
just missed it.
Just barely missed it. So that was a pretty solid, really solid end price for that card. And I archived it in my records for my entry for 1999 Fleer Brilliance 24 karat gold on the blog. Again, go to radicards.com if you want to see this record, and type in 24 karat gold baseball or 1999 Fleer Brilliance, or whatever the case.
Yeah.
It's actually coming in at, so far right now in my records, is the 5th most expensive sale of the records. And now I know these cards do pretty well depending on player, but the top sale in my records is Chipper Jones at $625. And right now the lowest is $35 for Tino Martinez. Now this is just 20 top sales. I don't record more than 20, and they're the highest ones. So if like, you know, one shuffles in, I kick out the bottom one so that it's just 20 all the time. So they're more affordable than 96 Select Certified Mirror Golds we discussed earlier. They're still catching on to popularity, but to me they're just as attractive in design as the 96 Select Certified Mirror Golds.
They're super cool.
Super pretty cards.
I paid about $215 for a Nomar 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
But that was a PSA 9.
Yeah.
I assume this Grace was raw.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't really consider Nomar and Mark Grace to be like in the same category of ball players.
Sure.
So I was a little surprised to see that the two ending prices were kind of close, but I'm sure if that Grace was in an 8 or a 9 or obviously a 10, it would have amplified the price a lot.
I don't know, man. I honestly, I might have to disagree with you because something because I look at this set as very popular with set builders and player collectors.
Gotcha.
And so I know of one person that collects Mark Grace, just one. And everybody else, they build sets that would be after this card. I can't think of another person. Maybe a Cubs collector, but even then, I don't know any Cubs collectors that are this ardent with Cubs cards because there's literally infinite supply of Cubs cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I part of me feels like this sale at this number was due to a set builder. Now, it might be the case that one Grace collector, and I haven't looked at his collection, he might have needed this card, and he was the bidder and won. But there were 16 bids. So there were a lot of people going after this card. And it started out auction style, just like you should, if you want to sell something quickly. And so this card's selling for $255, outperformed Roberto Alomar, Vladimir Guerrero, Mike Piazza, all Hall of Famers, those three guys. Piazza sold for $109, Vlad $153, Alomar $250. So it's interesting to see that Grace sold for that much. So it leads me to believe that the card rarely surfaces, for one, and two, it either went to a set builder or a player collector. I can't think of anybody else, but I feel like it went to a set builder because of the action involved. Like 16 bids, that's pretty significant. Still affordable, I think. $255 for the card is still very low for what it is. And I think that as time progresses, these kinds of sales will continue to slowly appreciate. So I wanted to touch on that. Do you have any comments?
No. Strong sale. I think we're both thinking of the same Grace collector. He's got an amazing collection. So I hope he was the one that got it.
He does.
He might already have one, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, his collection is. I mean, I think it's. I don't know any other Grace collectors, so I can't compare it to anybody else's Grace collector. But it's the best one I've seen. So it's a really nice collection. So just wanted to touch on that because that was kind of a significant sale this evening. Kind of fun to watch. And I just missed it with my $45 bid. Just barely missed it. Moving on, let's talk about card shows for a minute. Ryan, you and I have attended a lot of card shows, both together and on our own. Can you think of some aspects of a card show that make you want to attend the card show?
Good lighting.
Nice. Yeah, it's a cafeteria.
Good lighting, yeah. I always like it when dealers come with a wide variety from modern to vintage, sort of everything in between. The last show I went to, there was one dealer who only had vintage game used cards of a certain player. And it was such a niche thing. And the booth was not very well attended. I was there for a couple hours and I didn't see anybody over there. So I just like it when they have a nice variety, cheap stuff, expensive stuff, brand new products, old products. It's just sort of got to cover the whole gamut from a collector's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, variety is so important. But variety in the dark sucks, right? So you're got to have good lighting and variety, right?
Absolutely. Number one, number two.
Yeah. So variety is really important. I see. Okay, so here's the thing with me. Variety is important, but it's only as good as the price points available to you at the time. So you can have amazing variety, but if everything's 10 times market value, I'm not going to have a very good time at this card show.
Mm-hmm.
I might have a good time blogging about stuff I find, but I probably won't bring anything home. So perfect example, maybe not the best example, so it's not actually the perfect example, but when I went to the Long Beach Expo that first time, I couldn't afford anything I saw because it was all high-end auction houses. I didn't bring $80,000 to spend on a Joe Jackson card. Okay, so I brought like $100, and then I couldn't find anything in my price range, so I went home empty-handed. This happened the first couple of times I went to this show. So I'm not saying that the prices were too high outside of market par. They were right at market. It's just my budget wasn't at market. So I couldn't afford anything. So I will say this. Variety is important, but so is price availability. Like being able to buy something at feeling like you got a bargain or you got a good deal or you found something for a good price. Like, hey, I got this Tony Gwynn rookie for $5.
Yes.
I didn't get, it wasn't for 15 and the guy he's like, you can do $14 on. I'm like, sorry, I can get the next booth for $5. If there was another booth that was selling it for $5 because it's pretty common. So I think price points is really important, and variety and table, like not just two dealers. I want to see like 20, 30 dealers. You and I used to go to Frank's, and that was like so cool because there were just rows of dealers, and I just thought that was so much fun every weekend. And that to me is like sort of ideal because it's just big, almost like celebration of sports card, shoppers and dealers. And that to me was very ideal, shuffling around to different booths and, paying a guy here and there and bringing it home and kind of spreading it all out, see what you got and going through it. That to me it's really important. I really get a good time out of that. So.
Yeah. I went to the Long Beach Expo earlier this summer, and I went on the last day. I think it was like a Thursday through Saturday kind of show.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting some nice prices just because it's the last day. Some of these dealers were out from like Arizona and Las Vegas. So they made a significant financial and time investment to get out there.
Yeah.
And, it's the last day. You're looking around. You still have a lot of stuff in your booth. Let's start making some deals. And
you're there to sell is the thing. So
exactly.
Like, the smart dealers will do that. And I really appreciate it. And I've experienced that most of the dealers I've run into are like that, but every now and then, and I say most because it's not all, every now and then you run into one guy who's like, doesn't want to sell his stuff at the end, he wants to take it home. I think that people should understand they're there to sell. They're there to sell to their audience. Your customers. That's really important. So a show experience is really important when dealers are just very willing to work with you on things. I mean, realistically, you don't want to obviously you want to make them money and make it sense to both of us. You're not going to underball the dealer, And so I really appreciate it when guys, they have great bargain bins and they're willing to work with you on price that makes sense to both of you. And, they're there to sell. They're not there to show off. They're there to sell their collections or sell their inventory. And that's just really important to me. There have been several times at Frank's where, I don't know if you've run into this, where you'll pull a card out of some guy's showcase that's a total like nothing card and he wants $5 for it and you offer $1. He's like, no, I'll take $5. I'm like, well, you can just have it back because this Mike Lansing card's not going to sell for any more than $1,
Right. Yeah. I luckily had a good experience last time in Long Beach. There was one card in particular I offered $20 for. I think they were asking like 30 or 40. And the guy goes, I don't know. I could get that price all day long on eBay. And I said, all right, well, you can go sell on eBay if you want. Or I have $20 in my wallet right now.
Yeah, and no eBay fees and no PayPal
fees. No eBay fees. It's just straight up cash. And I mean, obviously you could sit at home all day and list a huge collection on eBay, but it's such a pain. And you start dealing with weird buyers on the internet and you shipping and all these things.
I don't mind that, but if that guy said, look, I can get 25 on eBay and you offered 20, that would make sense. But if he says I can get 20 on eBay, I was like, dude, yeah, but you're actually losing money because of the fees. I'm right here going to give you the entire amount of $20. So just look at me as a guy on eBay, but without the fees right now. But so that doesn't. It's just weird that someone would say like, you offer that amount, and then the guy's like, I can get that same amount on eBay. I was like, well, okay, well then take a loss on eBay.
Yeah, go to eBay then. So
it's really weird.
It was one of those like last day of the show sort of situations where they just said, fine, it's just get rid of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to pile all this stuff back in my car at the end of the day. So
right. I mean, I know that Beckett, they sell their big annual books at a discount the last day. They've done that before. I don't know if that's a consistent thing, but it's nice to know that you can get an almanac for, a fraction of the normal cost of those books. Are really handy references to have just for information.
Mm-hmm.
So totally get that. Again, show experience is important, especially if you're traveling and like you expect to get taken care of when you see something you want. There's always those sellers that try to get twice market value at big shows because that's the place where people are spending money and they know that. There's a lot of that happening. I kind of wish that it wasn't like that, but you can always like kind of weave your way into finding guys that are in there just to sell stuff, and they have great bargain bins, they have great inventory, they have great personalities, great customer service. These are the kinds of people I like to deal with. And I go back again and again and again. And so really happy about that. But I just want to touch on that because, I mean, we could just talk an entire podcast on this, and maybe we'll do that at some point down the line. But I think it's a good thing to think about when you go to a show. Like, what are the most important things about the show to you as a buyer, as a prospective buyer?
Yeah. And one of the sort of side goals of mine at shows is a networking opportunity.
Sure.
I try and get a business card from anybody I buy from. Even if I don't buy from them, if I talk to them for a little while and they have a nice collection, I'll get a card from them. Even if they're like a hobby shop out in Arizona, maybe I'm in Arizona next year.
Sure.
And I now have this relationship with this guy, and I can go in and talk prices with him if he's got stuff that I want.
Absolutely.
So that's always a good thing to have. I have in my collection, I have a whole section full of business cards, which I know is kind of old school, but some of these people don't have a robust online presence where you can just go check out their collection. They don't have a COMC account or a nice eBay account where you can just go do everything online.
Right.
There is some sort of old school aspect to some of these sellers. So take the business card. If there's a card that you want, maybe in a year, they might change their mind a little bit on the price.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. I do the same thing. I have stacks of business cards. I mean, I'd like to digitize them all just because I try to minimize the amount of clutter I have, but I appreciate that. I do the same thing. I carry with me business cards and I kind of trade and like, hey, contact me if you've got any of these cards or if you've got any Heidi and Frank Thomas or, anything from the set, et cetera. And it's nice to build those connections. I mean, we're people, we're meant to socialize and talk and get to know one another. And so it's a really valuable interaction and dialogue that we have with these dealers and other buyers too. I've met so many cool other collectors at these shows that just so many people in the industry between buyers, auction house owners, just, mom and pop shop guys, dealers, just people that are just there to sell. And it's just fun to get to know kind of what they're interested in, what excites them, what they collect, et cetera, if they collect anything. So that's just a good, awesome opportunity when it's really well attended. I like that stuff a lot. So I wanted to touch on that. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about that at least for a little while. That concludes this podcast. Ron, do you have any final thoughts?
I think we covered everything, man.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for tuning into the Radicards podcast and radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Gruno, and until next time, enjoy collecting. If you like this content, please subscribe. Thank you. Enjoy collecting.